I was just sitting back here and dancing and swinging. How is everybody? Happy, happy, happy day. Welcome, 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 welcome. And this actually is a special broadcast of our Powerhouse Mavericks training. And why that is we are broadcasting live into LinkedIn as well as on YouTube and then into our Powerhouse Mavericks Facebook group, which is typically where we offer this weekly training on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to our Powerhouse Mavericks group. Every week, we are bringing you top of mind topics and areas of your business and life that you really want to be working on. And I just decided that I would also hook into LinkedIn and onto YouTube to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to join in. But at the same time, if you are a Powerhouse Maverick coach, consultant, or service provider, then definitely join in on our Powerhouse Mavericks Facebook group because we do have a lot of community collaboration, engagement, training, coaching, challenges, and great ways for you to really be able to take your business to the next level. So who am I? If this is the first time that you are meeting me, I am Bernadette Bose, and I'm the founder, owner, and Chief Ball of Fire of Ball of Fire Coaching. And I basically have spent my days working with Powerhouse Maverick female coaches, consultants, and service providers to give them the tools, the strategies, and the mindset that they break through their money and time ceiling so they can create riches in their work and life. So you can learn more about me at balloffirecoaching.com. But like I said, we offer this Powerhouse Mavericks training each and every week at 1 p.m. And today we are talking about becoming a content creation ninja. And why is that? Well, it's because many of you, especially over the last several months, are just kind of getting overwhelmed and frustrated and just purely exhausted by the idea of creating content. And I get it a lot. I will have people kind of reach out to me and be like, oh my gosh, you are everywhere and anywhere. And you are, creating content on a regular basis, whether that's written or audio or video. And how do you get it all done? And so, feeling your frustration and exasperation, I have been there and done that, which I'll share a story with you. I just thought it would be important to get some focused tips and strategies for you, and even maybe make a shift in your mindset when it comes to creating content, because you can become a content creation ninja, as I call it, or a Powerhouse Maverick when it comes to content. And you can absolutely learn to love it, because why you want to love it is you're sharing you. You're sharing your expertise, you're sharing your backstory, you're sharing your experiences, your adventures, whether that's in, kind of a formal, polished tone or style, or whether it is in, kind of a very relaxed, very, like myself, people often say, very raw, very transparent, very out there type of tone and style. And however you want to define that, that is, completely up to you. And at the same time, in our Powerhouse Mavericks Facebook group, under guides, you will find past trainings. And one of those is when we talked about how do you kind of fit your personality and style into your content creation. And so you can go and look for that particular discussion, because that will help you then really kind of love content creation. But at the same time, the volume of it is what is getting you overwhelmed and stressed out. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, as far as what are some tips and strategies for really getting organized. And I actually call it rinse, repeat, and reuse. And that in itself will help you become a ninja. So a little backstory in regards to how, I got to the point where I literally was in my bed for 3 days, completely exhausted in the arena of content creation. It was back actually in early 2011. I had started writing my book, Shedding the Corporate Bitch, for those of you who may not be familiar. And I was writing my book in 2010 into 2011. And yet at the same time, I was already marketing and promoting it through 2010 with my show, Shedding the Bitch Radio, which I still have today, long before it was podcasts. so, I had the show to help market and promote. I was creating content, and it was when Facebook and Twitter were kind of just getting out there, and it was like the place to be. And it was the place where, the experts at the time, the gurus, were telling you had to be anywhere and everywhere, and you had to be constantly posting content. So I found myself most of 2010 into this early part of 2011, on my couch, morning, noon, and night, banging away at my computer to create content, to write posts, to create blogs, to create tweets, and convert all of that into then posts that I would then distribute long before there was Hootsuite and all the places you can actually schedule. I was driving myself insane having to create the content and then go out there and boop 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 distribute it across the platforms that were available at the time. And there was one particular evening, because I was getting ready for I was kind of leading up to this huge launch party I was having for my book. It wasn't going to be until August later in the year, but at the same time, I knew how important it was to get the stickiness and get the people kind of lining up to be part of this book launch far in advance. And there I was one evening on the couch in the living room, my laptop on my lap, some TV show blaring in the background, and it was about midnight. And for anyone who might know me personally, I am a stickler. I have my routines, and I'm in bed at 10 o'clock. I need my 8 hours of beauty sleep. And so to be up at midnight is really something that doesn't sit well with me. Or I'm going to just become really, continue to be that nasty person the next day. And so there I was banging away, and I'm like trying to get all these tweets out. I'd already done a lot of other, content, especially on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I just broke down in tears. I mean, I just broke down in pure exhaustion, pure exasperation, and pure frustration that, oh my God, is any of this going to work? Is any of this going to create any type of excitement and engagement, and people showing up at an event that was 6-7 months out that I was spending a great deal of money toward? And I just kind of said, okay, that's it. I just have to close my laptop and I have to go to bed. Well, I went to bed and I didn't wake up for 3 days. Or I should say I didn't get out of bed for 3 days. I was just mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, just exhausted and exasperated in every aspect. And I just stayed where I was. And I thought, okay, I obviously need a break. So I took a break. But then I got up, and I am known as, at the time I was really known as a kind of a process guru. I just looked for systems and processes and ways to improve everything that people were doing as well as what I was doing. And I thought to myself, there has to be a better way. Now, don't think that I went and invented anything. I leave that to the gurus. But what I did say to myself is I have to find what people are creating to make this easier. And it wasn't about the systems to pre-schedule. It wasn't anything about that. It was more so, how can I rinse, repeat, and reuse content? So I take one piece of content and then just splice it up and allow it to, propagate itself into any form that I want, and be distributed across platforms in the appropriate way. So, for instance, an article, deems itself appropriate for certain platforms than just a short little, post, or a tweet. You're not necessarily putting a tweet on LinkedIn, even on Facebook, as you would on Twitter. So I kind of just looked at, all right, what can I be doing differently and more efficiently to make my life much easier? And so there was a several things that I started to kind of implement and test out and throw a couple of away, bring in a couple of new ideas. And that's what I want to really share with you today. Because again, the objective here is to help you fall in love with creating that content that's really, sharing who you're about, what you do, how you do it, and how other people can benefit from it. And we need to do that as entrepreneurs or even corporate professionals. Since we're broadcasting on LinkedIn, there'll be professionals watching this as well. So, you could be doing the same thing within your own position and organization. So a few ideas that I'd like to share with you. That just has made my life so much easier, and even my clients, now that I'm, been sharing this for years, but sharing it with them. So the first idea would be a ideas book. Now I happen to use, and I actually don't have it in front of me. I thought I did, but I actually use my main journal that I track my goals and my plans and my to-dos. I actually use the back. So I actually start from back to front with my idea book. I call it the idea book. But, I use it. And first, what I would suggest you do is buy yourself a journal or a notebook. I used to have one small one, and I recently realized it was full. So I had a small little spiral notebook that I would just keep on the side of my desk. And anytime I got an idea, some people use their notes on their phone, and I certainly do that as well. And then in this case, I also decided that I got a new kind of formal journal, and I would start from the back to the front. And what I suggest to people to do initially, because one of the biggest challenges that many of you are having is just kind of, what do I write about, talk about, do training videos on, do live videos on? What do I even do? So what I suggest you do initially, because you're going to surprise yourself, that you just sit down and you really think about all the different tips, strategies, processes, frameworks, methodologies, all the business stuff. Because when we're in business mode, people tend to have an easier time thinking about their business before they move on to another area that I'll talk about in a second. So first, just sit down and say, okay, so what could I be talking about? And just start listing them. But then I would even go into each one of those and break into them even further, because most likely initially you're going to come up with big chunks of stuff. Well, I could talk about, how my framework, helps to do X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? X, Y, and Z is 3 pieces of content right there. So start making a list. Give yourself like 10 minutes and just say, okay, I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to, purge. In consulting, a lot of times it's called popcorn consulting. And it's basically, treat it like a popcorn, popping. Just what are all the things that are coming up in your mind that you can lay out on a piece of paper. And I'd recommend it to be in a journal or on your iPhone or laptop, something that you won't, easily discard. So you go through the first things that are coming to your mind. Then you go make another pass at it, and you say, okay, so how can I break that down even further? And then I have a series of pieces of content that I can be putting out there. Okay, so that's going to be for a lot of you from a business perspective. Looking at your business first is going to be kind of the easiest. Well, then, because people, want to be able to like, know, and trust you in order to do with you. And I have a whole training on our Powerhouse Mavericks Facebook group. If you want to join it, there you can go into guides, and there's a whole training session that we did recently on like, know, trust in order to get people to do with you. So in order for that to happen, people need to get to know you personally, your backstory, your current story, your future, ideas and dreams and goals and, challenges and whatnot. So sit down and really, what I did is I went back to my childhood. I went back to when I was, not necessarily crawling, but the first memory I had was when I was dealing with chicken pox, and I was in my parents' room on their bed, and my grandparents were coming in to visit me, and that had some significance to it. So I just started laying out all these personal stories that I could also be sharing that had a lesson or a tip or, just a way to, relate with the audience that you're messaging out in whatever form it's taking. Okay. So you lay out all these personal stories. Um, and that will give you, probably multiple pages of ideas that you can start with. And therefore, when I get, from my clients, or even, my mastermind group or friends and colleagues, and they'll be like, well, I have nothing to write about. I don't know what I'm, supposed to be writing about this week or next week, let alone 6 months from now. And I'm like, yes, you do. You just need to put some intentional thought and planning into it. And that is kind of the foundation of everything that we're going to talk about. Is when you're stuck, when you're frustrated, when you're unsure of yourself, it's really just because you're lacking some planning. And if you just went back into the basics of just sitting down and planning, and giving yourself some space mentally, emotionally, spiritually, let alone physically, to really just allow yourself to come up with ideas and thoughts, and recount experiences and events and your expertise, you'd be amazed how much content you're going to come up with. I share oftentimes, which I would have at the beginning had I thought about it, but I share oftentimes that you have everything that you need right now in order to create content. Now, you hear that a lot. You have everything that you need right now to succeed in business. Well, it's true, but you also, down at an even more granular level, you have everything you need right now to create great content. You just need to give yourself the opportunity to realize that, okay? Now, I should mention that if you're out there and you'd like to comment, and I know StreamYard, you're often required to give permission for StreamYard, for me to be able to see your comments on StreamYard, and that's where I'm broadcasting from. But please do say hi, leave a question, a comment, whatever the case might be as we go, okay? So you're creating a big ideas journal, book, piece of paper, or a note on your iPhone, and keep track of it. You're not necessarily needing to spend any time organizing it right now, or structuring it in a flow, or doing anything more than prove to yourself. I love proof, because oftentimes when people get insecure or frustrated, it's because they don't have proof and evidence that they have everything that they need in order to X, Y, and Z. And in this case, it's create content. So, and be sane about it, I should say, and be sane about creating content. So the first, area would be just get your list going, so you can see that, yes, if, all of a sudden Monday comes along and you don't have no content out there, you can pull from that list and you can start creating content. All right. Now, the second biggest challenge that people will have once they get over the idea that they don't have content and they prove to themselves that they do, is often the time where they'll start creating content, and they'll do it sporadically throughout the week, or they'll do it over the weekend, or they recognize that their day should be all about, sales, and therefore they'll save it to first thing in the morning or at night. And then they start doing it, but then then all of a sudden life starts, getting in the way, and actually more so their rhythm and routines and disciplines start getting in the way. And what I mean by that is, they really don't know when they're most productive, and when they're most creative, and when they're most patient and focused to create content. So they feel just forced into time blocks. Do you ever feel this way? They're forced into time blocks. And let's see. Why do you work back? Why? Oh, so Tracy, let me answer that for you. That's a great question. I wish I saw it before I moved on, but that's okay. We could go back and forth. And so why do you work back to front in your journal or notebook? That's a great question. I'm weird. First off, I'm weird. And I work backwards. I do this even in that journal. And I work backwards because one, it's going to be weird to describe. One is I leave the front, kind of free flowing thoughts and ideas. And then when something pops, then I put it on the back. Okay. So when I have like a separate journal just for ideas, and like I said, I thought I still had room in my little spiral notebook that I had, but I didn't. So I started with my other journal. But with my formal journals, as I call them, and like down below me, there is a pile of like 8 types of journals. They all look alike, different colors and whatnot, but they all have a different purpose. And most of them are clients, but there's a few of them that are the training work that I do and the content creation work that I do. And then others is for my normal day in, day out note taking, so forth and so on. But to answer your question is the journal that I use my big ideas for, in the front of it is where I'm like currently working on a couple of big presentations for corporate that I'm having to kind of outline and structure and whatnot. I also have a section in there because I'm working on my book outline, my second book outline. So the reason why I go from back to front is, like I said, in the small book, I kind of am working on this training for this client or two, and on my book outline, and I'm coming up with ideas. Like that is generating new ideas for me. So it's just easy for me then to flip to the back, and and I have I have a lot of pages separating, and I can flip to the back and just make note of what that idea is that I just came up with. And it's just a matter of how I don't want it to. I didn't have a separate journal, which I typically would like to have when it comes to my big ideas. So in this case, I said, well, I don't need to buy another journal. I'll just start from the back to the front, which I do oftentimes when I'm in a similar situation. So that's really the only reason why. I'm weird. Anyway, hi, Chris. How are you? Just letting you know I'm here. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. So continue to leave your comments and your questions, and we'll just continue on. All right. So I was talking about the fact that many of you will get into your content creation, into your week, and you're creating your content, but then you're getting frustrated and exasperated, and you're getting overwhelmed, and you're getting kind of you're feeling all of a sudden at the end of the week, because I'm an accountability coach, right? As part of my role. And, I'll be asking my clients and my mastermind and my, colleagues, how you doing? I call them checkpoints. How you doing? What's going on? What have you generated? And oftentimes they're like, gosh, I was creating content all week. And I'm like, well, why is that? And so it brings me to my second tip, which is really do a self-assessment of yourself, of, when is the best time for you to create content? When is the best time where you feel very open, very, kind of free of distraction, free of maybe some administrative work that you need to do, free of just anything that's going to get in the way of you being able to sit down, very focused, very, very organized to get your content created. At the same time, what it also might mean, and in the case of what I just explained, as far as, someone saying that all of a sudden their whole week got eaten up by creating content. I actually sat down on Friday, I believe it was, and I found myself for several weeks, due to the volume of business that I have, that I too was getting very overwhelmed in my schedule when it came to creating content. So I sat down Friday morning, and I actually went and said, okay, so what am I going to do to restructure my week and make sure that there's devoted time to sales and marketing? Because that's why we're in business, right? Is to generate sales. And in order to do that, we have to do marketing. Now, people will say, well, content creation is marketing. Well, that's not the type of sales and marketing I'm talking about. So you want devoted time to sales and marketing. And then you want to devote time blocks, if you do time blocking, to truly content creation. Now, again, based on your style that you're self-assessing, you determine if you can do that, on certain blocks in the morning, middle of the day, late at night, on the weekends, or like what I decided. I had been creating content from 6:55 in the morning and till 8:30 was my content creation time period, Monday through Friday. And I just thought, you know what, that just is sucking some energy and work that I need to do when I get into my sales or client support work during the day. So I said, okay, Fridays, I always have left, well, always for the last couple of years, have left I don't do any client work. And I don't do anything that's going to kind of, what would I say? I don't do my sales and marketing or client work on Fridays. I leave it to either free time, or I leave it to, now in this case, I'm leaving it to content creation. And so I tested it out on Friday to see, can I get all my content for the next week all done in this one day? And how much time would that take? And I found that, yes, I can get it all done, and it will take about 4 to 5 hours. So I can still have my free time. I can get my content created. And, unless there's a 911 call from a client, I really don't do anything other, I don't do any client or sales work on Fridays. And it worked out beautifully. And that's what my schedule will be. So what I would, suggest to you is ask yourself some questions about what is your best content creation approach. What is your time frame? What are the days of the week? What is that structure? And you could come up with very similar, you could come up with where you lay out exactly, well, we'll get to there in a second, but exactly when you're going to create content and when you're going to focus on other activities in your business. Okay. And then this can be formalized, and you can, kind of implement it right directly into your calendar, or you can keep it like I do in the front of my binder, which is laying down in front of me. But in the binder, so you can always refer to it. Okay. So you could ask yourself, like, when am I most creative? When am I not creative? When do I get real focused and I allow distractions to stay away? Like, I shut everything down and I'm okay with that. And I can, just focus on content creation. And it might, if it's an hour a day, it's an hour a day. If it's one full day, great. If it's in the morning, if it's at night, it's on the weekend, whatever the case might be, but it's very personal. So I'm not going to prescribe to you and tell you when you should do it, because it's very, very personal. Okay. So you just decide for yourself when the best time blocks and approach is to when you're going to be creating content based on you intentionally self-assessing yourself as far as how you work best. Okay. Because it's very personal. All right. Now the next tip I want to provide you, because now you have this big ideas list, right? And it might be a small idea, but you have this idea topics list that you're creating and you're using, you're scratching off. And yet, even when you scratch it off, it doesn't mean that you're done with it. Now, what do I mean by that? I would say for myself, the biggest impact that I've had to my content creation approach, I would say over the last 2 years, is rinse, repeat, and reuse. So all of a sudden someone said to me, it probably has been several years, but they had made a comment to me about the fact that I've been doing my radio show since 2010, long before, podcasts, although radio, even online radio, was definitely very popular. It wasn't when I started, but, obviously it's, became very popular over the last 10, 12 years. And so they had said to me, they're like, well, why? Because my week was full of live and recorded sessions. And they said to me that they're like, why don't you just reuse what you already have, interviews that you've already had? And not only that, after they had said that to me, I then got into a situation for a couple of weeks where I wasn't able to do anything live or even record it. I kind of basically had to take time off. I wish I could say it was a vacation, but it wasn't. But and I couldn't distribute content, whether that was my radio show or even my blog. And so I thought to myself, okay, I need to go and pull an old episode and just kind of make sure that I take out any specific time specific information. And I, can just clean it up, edit it, and repurpose it. And I kind of came back into my normal day in, day out. And I thought to myself, man, that was awesome. I didn't have to worry about that content for 2 weeks. And no one knew any different and no one cared that it was repeated content because it was still very relevant and it was still top of mind, which is very important to me, is making sure, everything that we're doing in, the Shift to Riches, Powerhouse Mavericks, or Shedding the Bitch community is very relevant and top of mind to the audience, to my, clients or my followers. And so I kind of started looking at all of my content. I mean, I had articles in various publications and on portals, and I just, probably spent a month, myself and an assistant at the time, and I just kind of aggregated and centralized all of my content. So when I am in a situation where I kind of I'm lost, or maybe there wasn't something in my list that I thought was relevant, right now, before I go and create something new, I say, is there something that I can rinse off? I can, repeat and reuse, and before I go and create anything new. So that would be a big thing for you to look at in your business and in your content is, based on what you might be planning out to do and to distribute, meaning from a topics perspective. Hi, Marina, how are you? Before you go and have to create anything new, consider, okay, so I wanted to talk about, Chris had reminded me that next month is Happiness Month. So I would, recommend to Chris or myself, I would sit there and say, okay, so it's Happiness Month. Have I written something in the past, or a video or a radio show? Is there something in the past that I can just kind of, listen through, watch through, maybe update because it's outdated or there's mentioning of the holiday, whatever the case might be, and I can reuse it, saving myself a good, probably in some cases 90% of my time, but in some cases it's like 60% if you do have to do, a lot of cleaning up and editing and that kind of thing. But definitely consider, before having to start anything from scratch, is there something that I can rinse off, I can repeat, and I can reuse? Okay. And again, it'll save you sanity. Trust me. And as I mentioned earlier on, is you have a great amount of content. Now, it might still be in your head. And it might even be in, in forms or formats of documents that needs to be, kind of moved around and reconfigured a bit. But at the same time, go to what you already have and see what you can do to prevent yourself from starting from scratch. If you have to start from scratch, that's fine. But first, intentionally consider what it is that you have right now. Okay. Now, when it comes to, say you have to start something from scratch, and not only that, but say you just need to sit down, like tomorrow, I'm going to need to sit down first thing in the morning. And, I blocked out from 9 to 12 content creation. And my motivation is going to be, I want to be able to play pickleball in the afternoon. Okay. So I have a why. I want to focus and be heads down and, get it done. And yet I could wake up tomorrow morning. You could wake up tomorrow morning during your, or whenever your content creation period is, and you're not in a headspace for it. You're agitated. You didn't sleep well. You're overwhelmed. You got so much to do. You didn't close any business this week, and you're, kind of getting anxious. Who can relate? Come on. So before you go down the path of like throwing up your hands and going, I'm not, either going to create any content, or you're sit down at your desk and you're just like, oh my God, this is such a pain in the ass. Before you get there, stop yourself and put yourself into a great state for creating content, a great creative state. And I don't even care, because creativity for some people is, some like the storytelling and the drama and, all the I don't know, the fluff, not fluff meaning density or value, but just, they're creative. Maybe fiction is a better way to look at it. And then others are very, kind of nonfiction. They're very how-to, process, framework, methodology, tips. And so, it's just a different way, a different style, a different tone of content that you're creating. So regardless of those personality types, you want to be in a good frame of mind when you sit down to create content. So whether that's you first look at your environment, physically your environment. Are you set up to be productive? Are you set up to be focused? Are you set up to not be distracted? Are you set up to, get done? Do you have what you need? So maybe buying a second monitor. I don't know about you, but having a second monitor has amped up my focus and productivity, amped up, because now I'm not having to on one machine close down, open up, close down, open up to pull, content and get it into the, main frame on my laptop. Having a second monitor has been priceless. So consider your workspace first, and get it set up in such a way that it gets you focused and productive. Now, your workspace is also going to be your phone, is going to be your emails, it's going to be your notifications on your laptop. It's going to be, whether you have music in the background or not, whether you have, people in your house or pets in your house or not. Many of you who know me know that I have Coco, a little pup, and there's times that I don't mind her out and about. And even when she's chirping, sometimes it's really barking, but chirping. And then there's times where I'm like, it does bother me and I need her in her crate and she doesn't say a word when she's in her crate, to the point where I actually forget she's in her crate and then I go do something and I leave the house and but that's for another day. So really kind of set up your workspace to be, content creation focused. Okay. Then work on yourself. Notice I didn't say work on yourself, then work on your workspace, because I find that anybody will say that when you lose momentum, you don't need to shift into a good mind space before you get motivated. You get into motion and then your mindset will shift. So first, just start moving and setting up your workspace, your home space, your environment will help you get moving and putting yourself into a content creation mind space. Okay. Well, then you get into the creativity mind space. Then you sit down and you work on, and if you have to do, any kind of modality of prayer, meditation, tapping, compliments of Chris, I mentioned that, whatever you need to do to get you into a good mind space, a creative, open, energized mind space, then do it. Because you don't want to sit down and look at a blank piece of paper or maybe something you're going to rinse and repeat and reuse, and you're not in the mood. It's going to come across very stale, very bland, not your personality. So shift. Okay. And then, like I said, oftentimes when I find people stuck or frustrated or overwhelmed, it's because of lack of planning. So here, you're welcome, Chris. So here we've talked about having a big ideas book and kind of just keeping notes of ideas that you could be writing about. We've talked about how you can self-assess yourself as to, what is that work environment, home environment, that headspace that is most productive? When is that schedule that you're most creative, that you're going to be focused? And, therefore you really understand yourself when it comes to creating content. Then we talked about how you can set up your environment to be most productive and then work on your headspace. Well, all of that, has a foundation of planning. So now what I want to share with you is what you could do to get, once you have all this content, how can you then be focused and energized and excited about then how you're going to distribute it without driving yourself insane. All right. And this isn't just about, okay, I'm going to get Hootsuite or one of the other scheduling tools and just sit down and schedule everything out. It's more so about two things. It's about what can I do with one piece of content to rinse, repeat, and reuse in a very planned out, structured way. And then how can I get it easily distributed? Okay. So the first one would be, and let me get my little example here for you. The first one would be is, and it's going to be the first of several, but the first one would be, you could write a long blog. Say you keep a blog, and it's typically your longest form of content. Okay. So you could write your blog and write it out just the way you were going to write it. And then you could take that long form blog and you can start cutting into it. So say you take that long form blog and then you take an excerpt from it and put it in your newsletter and say, read more, to send somebody to your website to read the long form blog. Well, then you could take either the long form or the excerpt, and you can then take even a smaller piece and you can create multiple, posts, whether that's for Facebook or Twitter. Maybe you're going to create quote cards or tip cards for Instagram. And then you can then take those tips or take that excerpt or take that long form blog, and you can turn it into a training video or just a maybe 3-minute tip video. Maybe you turn it into one of your radio episodes, so forth and so on. You with me? So here you're also planning kind of how you're going to take one piece of content and rinse and repeat and reuse it, but more so in, planning out the kind of the structure, the actual, segments of how you can take one piece of content and reuse it across all your platforms. Okay. So I laid out something here because then you have some people start with radio. So I have a colleague friend who has a podcast, and he kind of plans his topics around his podcast. And then he takes that audio and starts breaking it out and creating posts and blogs and newsletters. So however, you want to structure it. For instance, my radio shows are often planned out months in advance, and they're not necessarily on topic to what I want to be sharing within my communities for that given week. So you'll often find that my weekly topics, like this week, I've been sharing everything about becoming a content creation ninja. But my radio show on Tuesday was not about it. Was not about that. Okay. So however you want to structure and where you want to start to then be able to reuse your content is up to you. Okay. You can start with a blog post. You can start with your newsletter. You can start with a post that really, is a paragraph or two about something. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. That would make a longer form blog that I can then turn into my newsletter and turn into other things. You can start with your radio. And then some of you I know are doing videos. And so some of you are out there on LinkedIn Live, you're on YouTube Live, you're doing videos, and you think you're just doing a video. Well, guess what? You could be also taking that video content and turning it into your blog and newsletter and Facebook posts and Instagram images and quote cards and you name it. Okay. So all of a sudden, one piece of content becomes a lot of content for you, cutting down the amount of time it takes to create that content. So here, as I showed the bottom part earlier, here at the top, you could lay out, exactly what your initial piece of content is, and then what all the other forms of content you could be creating out of that piece of content. And this I just threw together really quick. It's not what I use in my binder, but I wanted to make sure you kind of saw the impact that content creation doesn't have to be difficult. You just need to put some thought and planning into it in order to not, get the overwhelm and frustration from it. Okay. All right. So then secondly, I'd mentioned there's two in this part of it. Then secondly is, okay, so when am I going to distribute it? When, and when is it appropriate to send out certain pieces of content, and where? So we won't go into I could give you tons of how-to coaching tips on where and how you should be distributing, your content based on your ideal client, based on what events or programs or offers you have going on right now. That's a lot more specific and custom and tailored to you. But what I will say is at least have a standard plan. And I'd like to tell people to structure it around a week of when you're going to post what, where. So let me show you what I mean by that. So say you do come up with a topic or a theme for the week. All right. And it's just like we said, you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to have this blog and I'm going to cut it out to be an excerpt in my newsletter. And then I'm going to have, posts, and I'm going to have images. I'm going to have quote cards. I'm going to have a video, and I'm even going to throw it into my podcast. Okay. But when, where, and how am I going to do all of that? And it just sounds so overwhelming. Well, lay out for yourself exactly when and how you're going to do that and where you're going to do that. So let me show you my exact one. And this is a little bit more colorful. So here you'll see that, I have the location. It's my Ball of Fire blog. Okay. There's my theme that runs all the way through. And then it says when I'm going to write it and when I'm going to post it. All right. And then I have all of my other, there's 3 sheets to this, but then I have all my other ones. What am I going to do with my email list? What am I going to do on Facebook? And my other sheets in my binder will walk through when am I going to do it on LinkedIn? When am I going to do it on YouTube? So, and then let me go down a little bit further to say, so some people don't know what and when they're actually posting a piece of content, and which then leaves them to kind of go a little bit frenzied that morning or maybe at the beginning of the week. So come up with a standard. Which way am I going here? Okay, come up with a standard. So on my Shift to Riches Today page, Mondays, I put out a rich tip. On Tuesdays, I put out my blog. On Wednesday, I put out another rich tip. And then I also promote my live training for the next day, which is Thursday. On Thursday, I can't read that. Oh, I put out a quote, an inspiring quote. And then on Friday, what am I doing on Friday? Oh, I do a Friday funnies. I do a comic on Fridays. And this is my Shift to Riches Today page. And then down here, is my Shift to Riches group, which is Powerhouse Mavericks. I lay out that I do Motivational Monday. I do Rich Conversations on Tuesday. I do Snap Wednesdays. I do Training Thursdays. And I do Inspiring Quotes on a Friday. So I know exactly when I wake up in the morning, and if I was creating content daily like I had been, I just opened up my binder. I looked at this and I said, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But now on Friday, I'm using it and saying, okay, what content do I need to create in the time blocks that I've laid out on a Friday? Does that make sense? So it's just a matter of planning, laying things out, putting it on paper, so you're not overwhelmed and frustrated and exasperated. Because trust me when I say, between planning and getting your structure in place, and then rinse, repeating, and reusing content, one piece of content or one topic first, one piece of content that you can then break up into all these other formats and mediums, will save you a significant amount of time and sanity in order for you to be able to move forward and actually do the work that you want to be doing, which is serving your clients and ultimately making money. Okay. So those are some tips. And does anyone have questions? And if you do, whether or not it's while we're live, or I come back to all of these platforms that I distribute, such as this session, and I'll look, this afternoon, I'll look tomorrow, in case I've missed something. But if you have a question or a comment, then please leave it and let me provide you some tips and ideas as to how you can be handling your content creation. Because one, you deserve to love creating content, because again, it's about you, it's about your story, it's about your expertise, it's about your know-how, it's about your clients, it's about the value that you're bringing your clients. So much about why you're in business, doing what it is that you're doing. And you should love sharing that. But I totally understand the exasperation from having to then sit down and create it and distribute it. But there's, ways and, strategies you could be using to make that so much more streamlined and efficient for you, so you do become a ninja in content creation. Okay. And then lastly, should you want, any help in regards to your approach and what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, schedule some time to discuss it with me. I'd love to understand your goals, your challenges, your opportunities, and see, if there's anything that, I could be doing and supporting you as your transformation and success coach, as you move forward. Because you certainly don't want to be spending your day exhausted, exasperated, and overwhelmed. You want to be doing productive, revenue-generating, results-oriented work so you can serve as many clients that are out there that need you. All right? So you can go to tiny.cc/discovery call and schedule that complimentary call and allow me to share with you. Okay? But until the next time, and again, because I am streaming on LinkedIn and into YouTube, if you want to be participating in our weekly Powerhouse Maverick training that I do every Thursday at 1:00, you can join over on Facebook, look for Powerhouse Mavericks, and join the group. And it's a wonderful group of women, and we do have some men who are powerhouse coaches, consultants, and service providers, collaborating, engaging, sharing, learning, and even supporting one another. So you could be part of that as well. And I would love and be honored to have you in the community. So you can go to Powerhouse Mavericks on Facebook. Okay. But until the next time, I will look forward to engaging and sharing with you, and see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.